Okay, we are live. I know we're still just a little shy of 6:30, but you're in control.
All right, and it is 6:30. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Wednesday, December 9th, Henrietta Town Board Special Use Permit Meeting. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford,
Here.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. For anybody online, you can join either via Zoom or Facebook. With Zoom, if you wish to speak, you can raise your hand if you're using the computer or an app, or if you're on the phone call, you can hit *9, and when it's your turn to speak, the meeting host will enable you to talk. Please use the Q&A feature in Zoom. Please reserve that for the deaf and hard of hearing. And very much appreciate it. So, should we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up, we have application number 2020-28. Imburgia Brothers Holding, FSI Construction, near the corner of Erie Station and West Henrietta Road, a portion of the former Delphi complex, to construct a plus or minus 210,600 square foot distribution building in an industrial with specifics zone district. Tax account number 189.01-1-19.2, or is more particularly described in plans on file in the town clerk's office. Do we have a representative from Imburgia Brothers?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. Jess Sudol from
Introductory presentation.
Yes, sir. Joining us this evening is Frank Imburgia from FSI, who's actually showing up under my name, but is in the other conference room there. And also Dave Merrick, who I also forwarded the invite to. So looks like there's a lot of Jess Sudols, but really just me. So anyway, this proposal was originally brought before the town board last month. It's located at 5500 West Henrietta Road, which is behind the old Delphi facility. As we disclosed last month, the Delphi building was recently sold and is going to be kept and reused. So we're certainly happy to see that happening as opposed to it being abandoned or knocked down. Along with that, there is approximately 40 acres of industrial zone land or industrial with specifics that is to the west and to the south of the existing Delphi building, which I'm going to share my screen now here. You'll see a overall drawing. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so the lot 2 is the existing Delphi building and the associated infrastructure. Route 390 you see there is over on the right side of the drawing, and West Henrietta Road on the left side, with Erie Station Road on the southern or bottom portion of the drawing. The proposed lot 1 is the subject of the special use permit, where we are proposing an industrial type use. Previously, when we appeared before the board last month, we made the statement that we didn't have any users yet, but we did have a lot of interest. But when we did get the interest, it was very much in shovel-ready projects. So we are proceeding with pursuing the special use permit to better position ourselves to be able to respond to those potential users. The good news is, and I'm actually going to pull up the old plan that we presented last time, and you see it there. It's a pretty linear building over here in the southwest corner with loading docks on the east side and the employee parking on the west side of the building. At this point, this was more or less a placeholder, but over the course of the last month, we have gotten a more definitive interest from a potential user that has led to a site plan change, which we think is an improvement to the surrounding community. But with that also comes a change in the building height, going from 40 feet, which is allowed as of right, to 50 feet, which requires a special use permit. So we don't anticipate the board taking any action this evening for that reason, as we are submitting an updated special use permit request to address the more specific proposed use. I'm actually going to flip over to that now on the overall plan. And you can see there, that's the proposed building, approximately 200,000 square feet. It's much more of a square shape than linear as the previous proposal. And we think that adds a tremendous benefit to the site plan. As you can see, the south of the proposed building, where it says proposed lot 1 there, we've been able to dramatically increase the amount of green space and separation. So if we flip back, you see the project there, which had a lot more parking, building, and was a lot closer to Erie Station Road. And more importantly, the single family homes on the other side of the road, as compared to the new site plan, which is a lot more compact, certainly a lot more green space and a lot more significant separation from those single family homes. So even though we are looking for a higher building, the separation and the potential visual impact to single family homes, we feel is much less, because not only is the building going to be set back further, but it's also further down the hill. The high point on the site is really up here in this area. Sorry, I keep getting that text popping up, but kind of on the Erie Station roadside. So now we're being pushed further down the hill, so that, you know, that change in height is going to be relatively minimal. The reason for the change in the height, or the request for the special use permit for the height, is based on the internal operations for the building. There's going to be a significant cold storage component to this building, which has a particular racking system, which by the time you factor in the roof trusses and the height requirements for the rack system, you get to that 50 foot that's going to be requested. This type of cold storage could potentially and will actually include medical type uses, or medical type products, I should say. Sorry, I was looking for that correct word, that could be distributed to the Rochester area. So they would be brought in here on some larger trucks, stored in a cold controlled environment, and then ultimately distributed out to the community. As mentioned at the last meeting, we have performed a traffic study. We did get our preliminary comments from the county DOT, and we are in the process of addressing those. I will note that there weren't any significant comments, such as, you know, the project's going to have a really significant or detrimental impact on the roadway network, including Erie Station Road or West Henrietta Road. We're not proposing a new curb cut. There are 2 existing curb cuts that go into Delphi, and we will be connecting to one that goes onto West Henrietta Road. And we project the majority of our traffic will leave our site and travel north on West Henrietta Road up to Lehigh Station, where they can then get to through 390 and the interstate system. I do want to point out that in addition to the, you know, pretty significant green space here on the southern side of the parcel, there's also some significant separation, berming, ponds, green space, etc., on the western side of the site that buffers those properties on the corner of Erie Station and West Henrietta Road. We do realize that there are some historic properties there, so we are doing everything we can to limit our development footprint area and provide that significant buffering and green space, as opposed to many traditional industrial uses that we see really build out to the maximum that will be allowed by code, and we're certainly well under that. So, you know, they're here this evening to continue to collect input and comments from the board. Again, because we are submitting that modification to the special use permit, we don't anticipate any kind of vote or decision this evening, but certainly look forward to comment and input so that we can continue to provide the town the information required to consider as part of the special use permit and seeker review. So with that said, I don't know if Frank or David FSI, if you guys have anything to add, but if not, we'll take any comments from the board or public.
So a couple comments. just looking at this for the first time. My first thought is I'm wondering if the building, if it would be possible to rotate the building 90 degrees or some other solution so as to move it a bit further to the east. One of the things that we're considering, I was talking to folks who own historic properties along the road there, as well as to members of our historic site committee. And when we did the update to the comprehensive land use plan, we put in a minimum buffering table. And it was 100 feet to existing residential, and we had 150 feet to parks and schools, places like that. Per the recommendation of the historic site committee, I want to take a look at that we add to that category historic properties. So that would mean you would need 150-foot buffering to the historic properties to the west. In looking at your site plan, again, it looks very achievable. You know, basically you're essentially have to shift 50 feet east. And again, it looks like you've got the space to do so. So maybe, you know, at some point later we'll communicate that. Actually, I just realized, let me take a quick step to talk about procedurally. So basically for those and where they first came in and put in the notice of intent to move on this so that we could, and got their preliminary application in so that we could essentially declare our intent to be lead agency for seeker. That 30 days has expired, so, and no one has objected. We have received notice from a number of agencies that they would be interested in being involved or interested parties, including the county, but no one has objected to us taking lead on this for seeker. Regardless of the change in 50 foot, we wouldn't be prepared to do a seeker determination today because again, we don't have all the comments back on the traffic impact study. And as Jess mentioned, they just received some of them back and they're going to start addressing those. So no matter what, we wouldn't have been able to deal with that tonight. With the change in the height, the developers had asked whether we should cancel this meeting. And I basically told them, no, let's keep this meeting because we'd already sent out legal notices. We already had people coming in. Let's get them the feedback so that hopefully they can mitigate and minimize any impacts from this. You know, and then it gets into, for those who are unaware of the way seeker works, basically it's in the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Basically, we identify things that we believe to be significant impacts on the environment. And by environment, that also includes character of neighborhood, historic properties, habitats, drainage, you name it. The developer then has a chance to mitigate those. If at the end of the day, either because they're unwilling to or unable to, there are unmitigated significant impacts, then we can deny them. If they've successfully mitigated all of those impacts, then we can. So that's one of the things I want people to get us, what those significant impacts are on the surrounding areas so that we can identify them and so that they can, you know, again, hopefully for their sake, that they can mitigate them. The other aspect when reviewing this has to do with the special use permit. That's part of zoning laws, and there are a number of standards that have to apply there as to whether this meets the zoning requirements. You know, again, it's an industrial with specifics. So we'll be digging deeper into what those specifics are to make sure there's no issues there. But there are also a series of questions of law, essentially, that we address from a special use permit standpoint. So that's basically how these reviews go. I know there's some people who would love it if we just said, no, we don't want it. We want the open space. But the thing people have to understand is just as you have property rights on your property, so does the owner of that Delphi property. So as long as they're working within the zoning laws and they're working within the seeker, again, to mitigate any issues we identify, they are allowed to, they basically have the right to develop. So, you know, I know there's, like I said, there's people who get mad at town boards for approving development. If we turn things down, basically if we're not fair, if we, you know, are unbiased or capricious or just turn them down because we don't like it, typically what happens is those town board get sued, they lose, the development still occurs, and the town is out a bunch of money. And when we say the town is out a bunch of money, that means you, the taxpayers, are out a bunch of money. So, you know, again, this board has been very responsible, weighing the, basically weighing the needs of the community with the needs of the developers, and hopefully, you know, again, making sure the developers are in line with all current zoning and seeker, and that hopefully they, you know, sometimes we go, what I'll say, beyond seeker. So even if it's not a major impact, if there is something they can do to make it better for their neighbors, we will ask them to do it, and sometimes we will require them to do that. I will say that this particular developer has been very responsive anytime the town has asked him to make a change. He has pretty much for the most part. And, you know, again, not all of those could we have dictated. A lot of them we just requested, but he did them anyway. So I just wanted to make sure people understood the boundaries within which we work. So with that said, like I said, I want to start addressing some of these issues that we see with the plans and things that we think can mitigate them. So again, number one would be there'd be no infrastructure, no parking lots or no buildings within 150 feet of the historic properties. The second thing is that there is a stand of trees to the north of the historic cobblestone that currently you have your berm going through it. There is a request from that property owner to leave that stand of trees there. And, you know, so the idea, one of the thoughts is with that extra 50 feet, if the berm, basically the backside of that stand of trees is about 100 feet deep from the historic property. And so if the berm started there, right, and essentially if that berm pushed 50 feet to the east, I don't think it needs to go all the way out to the road. If it needs a slight berm from a drainage standpoint, that might be one thing, but like I said, that stand of tree today provides decent coverage, and that particular property owner was expecting to be here and did, oh, he is here, okay. And he has some images so we can see, you know, the impact on that. And, you know, as you'll see, it's a gorgeous cobblestone. And whereas this, there's no question this will impact the sight lines behind the house, the goal is obviously to minimize those, especially for a historic property. I will note that from the front of his properties, you cannot see the current Delphi building. So again, you know, because of the terrain and the way the stuff lays out, it may be possible to essentially keep this hidden as well. But, you know, that is certainly something that I certainly will vote to add as a significant impact is what this does for the view shed directly behind the that historic property. I'll take a break. Go ahead.
And we can absolutely keep that stand of trees. That is a very simple improvement, and simple in terms of it's not terribly challenging for us to do. So we'll definitely keep those trees.
Great. I'll take a break, let others, board members chime in.
With the changes, are we going to get a new environmental assessment form? I mean, because obviously there's going to be a lot of changes here. So some of this information won't be correct.
Yeah, well,
if there's any significant, or to use Don's term, if there's a material change from the initial form, yes, they will be required to update that.
Okay, so how many square feet is the new proposed building?
200,000.
Okay, so this,
So it's actually a little bit
a
less,
little smaller.
Did he say 200,000?
200,000, whereas originally it was 210,
Okay.
600. So it's a little bit smaller, but obviously, if nothing else, it's got to be adjusted because they're increasing it to 50 feet as part of this, they will be applying or, getting a second, putting in a second application soon.
How many dock spaces?
I believe there's 46, or no, I'm sorry, 28 dock spaces.
28,
Well, that's
so
going
it's
down.
41. Okay.
Jess, just for purposes of simplicity, could you just go ahead and update the part one and
Yeah, that's good.
submit a new one with your updated plan?
Yes, of course.
Thanks.
Let's call it a revision. So we're not starting the clock all over again.
Mike, I had a lot of questions, but they were off of this report, so.
Right.
If,
Right, but so I know one of the questions that's going to come up is, what is the expected traffic flow in and out of here, right? Because I can tell you, one of the things that the Historic Site Committee has concerns about is any heavy trucks going through that intersection of West Henrietta Road and Erie Station Road because of the historic properties there, their proximity to the road, the potential damage that continuous heavy truck traffic can do to those structures.
Yeah, we can elaborate that in more detail. As I stated generally a little bit earlier, we don't anticipate much traffic, if any, going through that intersection, with the vast majority of it all going up into the north.
One of the things that's going to be interesting is there's already I know one of the local representatives from the Teamsters Union has already approached New York State about modifying the throughway exit, because when they got rid of the toll barriers, they no longer allow the big rigs to turn left into the truck staging areas. So for those who are unaware, just as used to come through the toll barrier, off to the left was a parking lot and a road access to another bigger parking lot where big rigs could essentially come in and unhook. And especially if you had the tandem trucks, which are great on the throughway, not so great on town and city streets. Since they went to the toll-less barrier and that speed limit increased, they shut that down. So what that means today is these big rigs have to get off at Lehigh Station Road, come down to West Henrietta Road, come south on West Henrietta Road, and turn left right near the Brooks Road intersection. There's an entrance to that same parking lot from there. One of the reasons I mention this is if that's there, then any of the big trucks coming to and from this wouldn't have to go through they basically only have to go through the stretch of road from the exit of the Delphi Park up to the entrance of the throughway exit, and therefore would not spend much time on the roads in the town. I don't know how that's going to be resolved, because their fear is if I've got a truck turning left and I have somebody flying 40 miles an hour, they may not have a safe stopping distance. I don't know if they're going to put in a light. I don't know if they're going to put in flash. I have no idea what the state's going to do. It's totally up to the state. But I do know that there are a number of groups that have expressed concerns with redirecting all that truck traffic onto the town roads. Now, with that said, the roads that they do drive on are both state roads, both Lehigh Station, that portion of Lehigh Station Road and that portion of, all of West Henrietta Road are state roads. So ultimately, it's all within the state's jurisdiction. That doesn't mean that us and the county sheriffs and the Teamsters unions and local drivers, residents can't say, hey, you've created a dangerous situation here. It needs to be resolved. So again, I just let people know that is in the works. I have no idea what will happen with that. Other questions from the board, comments?
Jess, last month you said, I thought you said 200 or 300 trucks per day would be going in and out of that site. And then on the report, it says 20 or 30. Is that a typo or, but with this new plan, could you tell us how many tractor trailers would be going in and out of that? And would any local delivery vehicles like UPS trucks or, like Amazon has all their vehicles going, smaller vehicles going in and out of there for local deliveries?
Yeah, there will be some smaller trucks going in now. In
I
reference
didn't hear
to,
you.
yes, there will be some smaller vehicles, but in terms of the larger trucks, it's much closer to the 28 to 30 number. I don't recall saying 2 to 300, but
Okay, that's what I wrote. I thought, so, okay. So these, how many smaller local delivery vehicles would you say?
it would vary by day, but that number could be, for the entire day, up to around 200.
200?
Yeah, but let me check with and get a more specific number. And then when we update our documents, I'll make sure I have a number that's accurate.
And do you have who the tenant is?
Yes, we do. We're not able to disclose that yet.
I asked if it's a Fortune 500 company, maybe.
I will defer to the applicant to comment on that, but I don't believe it's the one you're thinking of.
Thank you.
Maybe at some point we'll look at that. I'll see if we can have essentially an executive session to discuss it initially. I don't know what the legalities on that are, Don, or not, or
Yeah.
if there's any way to keep it confidential until it's ready. But I guess the question is, well, I guess it's technically based on use, not who
Not
the
the
person is, but.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's any session we could go into to discuss an application that's supposed to
Right.
be public, essentially. Trying to think, I can think through that a little bit more.
Sure.
I think-
Again, we're not going to make a decision. We're going to have another hearing at the next meeting to review the height application as well. So there's some time to think about that.
Okay.
So right now, Jess, the entrances will remain at the top of the hill where they are now?
Yes, there won't be any changes to the entrances.
How many employees are we anticipating that would be coming and going from this particular facility?
We were asked to provide parking for over 200, but before you even asked that question, in my notes here, I wrote down specifics on number of employees, so I can get you some more of that information. I apologize for not having it earlier, but I'll get you a number of, the large trucks, the small trucks, and excuse me, the number of employees prior to the next meeting.
And you mentioned that the potential tenant would possibly be doing some sort of pharmaceuticals. Are there going to be any hazardous materials?
No, not hazardous materials.
What are the, on the original application, it said the hours would be between 5 AM and 7 PM. Obviously, I'm concerned with, the neighbors, the residents in the area and the noise and things. Is that still the 7 AM to 7 PM?
Yes,
7 days a week?
I'll confirm that along with some of these other operational items.
Okay.
Are we ready to open it up to the public? Do we have somebody from, come on up? State your name and either your address or affiliation, if you're affiliated with the
Can
company.
I, just for speaking, can I? since
Yep,
I'm
that's
bringing it
fine.
down? Thank you. My name is Mark Congdon. First of all, I just want to say my affiliation is my wife and I own 5582 West Henrietta Road. It's the historic cobblestone. And 5537 across the street. That's also a Terabasi building that was part of that farm. It's not historic. It could be. It's eligible to be historic, but I have not chosen to make it that way yet. First of all, I just want to say I'm not one of these people that are going to come up here and yell at the board or you supervisor, because I understand this is America. I believe it's America. You should be able to do what you want with your own property as long as you don't hurt the neighbors and you play within the rules. And so that's what I want to be here tonight, is just talk about playing within the rules. And I'm going to cite some of the zoning code and I've prepared some slides that I'll explain in a moment. But back in 2000, I moved my business from Geneseo to Methodist Hill in the Lefroy complex. I love Henrietta. And when the lease was starting to tick down, I looked for a place and I spotted this beautiful old dilapidated cobblestone. I pulled into a gate where Howard Konar was just building Erie Station Village. And I turned around there and I said to my son, there's my next office. This thing is beautiful. And he says, Dad, it's a wreck. And I said, well, we can fix anything. And I poured my heart and soul into that. I bought it in 2004. In 2005, the town gave me the beautification award. And I got a couple congressional commendations for restoring it. It's a very historic house. It was built in 1832 by the Post family. It's the Abel Post homestead. There's less than 900 cobblestones left in the United States. It was rumored to be on the Underground Railroad. They found an underground tunnel. But Frederick Douglass wrote about coming to West Henrietta all the time. And so there's a good chance he sat in that living room there. That I've restored the whole building back to period. Architects told me tear down that carriage house. I insanely put 7 times more than it's worth in there and restored it to period. I love it. I want to talk about the character of the community. West Henrietta is unique. When Geneseo was going to build a Walmart, they put up signs, Geneseo yes, Genrietta no. That's where I live, historic Geneseo. I was so mad and I told them off. I said, you would be lucky to have a neighborhood like I have in West Henrietta. Our neighbors, we have coffee on the lawn. I mean, people walk their kids to school. You see people walking dogs. You see people jogging. You see, it is a true neighborhood. And I thank Howard a lot for that. He's built something fantastic over there. People walk their kids to school. They strolled onto Ken's Pizza Shop. This is a neighborhood. It truly is. And I know we're zoned industrial, but we're industrial with specifics. And so Delphi very carefully fit into that neighborhood. I mean, that was a park they kept. Everything was out by the thruway, and we had our little neighborhood. I want to show you some pictures and the people watching at home the pictures. This first picture is the beginning of Howard's beautiful Erie Station Village. That's the road. What you don't see to the left of this is the Terabasi original house. That is RKW Engineering, another stellar building, kept up nicely. That greenhouse is the other one my wife and I bought, another Terabasi house. And I fully renovated that. And this is taken from the front of my cobblestone. If I could have the next picture. This is my cobblestone. A lot of you know it. The schools asked to take pictures, weddings asked to take pictures all the time. There's 2 walls like this, one on each side. The stand of trees that we were talking about is across the driveway. You can see over across the way. But we spend over $10,000 a year on flowers and landscaping in the front of that. I mean, it's a stellar property, and it's been maintained meticulously. Now we'll get into the views that we see. If you can go to the next picture. This is the side of the cobblestone. That is the field where we're talking about building. This is the Delphi field where we're talking about building. That's the view from the side of my cobblestone. If you're walking back from Ken's, all right, or if you're some of Howard's tenants just taking a stroll, this is what you see a little bit farther down in the next picture. This is from almost the border of my property. I have a very large lot. That would look exactly at the building there. You see the rise in the elevation. So that's what you see. If I can have the next picture, you see the carriage house in the back. This is from the edge of the carriage house. You can see the sign, Abel Post Homestead established 1832. That is where I look at directly back, coming out of the back side of the cobblestone. Again, there's your hill. Those trees I planted this year. Now, I'm not proud to say this, that's not my property that I planted those trees on. However, there is a wild runoff there. And what I did is I created a little berm and I put $15,000 of drainage because my sump pumps run continuously in the spring. And I said, all right, let's do something about this. And I did that. I want a full and fair disclosure after 11 certified attempts to contact Delphi to say, can we do something about this problem with your hill? So I figured, all right, they're not paying much attention. There's hardly anybody left up there. I'm gonna do that. But there's that. Can I have the next picture? This is from towards the corner of my property near those trees. That's looking back out over that. If you see the rocks on this first tree, just past that is on this last map, not the new one he's talking about tonight, where the parking lot would start. Where the parking lot would start. You've got to remember, my property line is just at the back of that building, all right, just at the back of the garage there. So 100 feet from that is just past that tree. And that's where the parking lot was going to be. And I don't feel much better about this proposal I saw up here tonight, all right, because what Jess said was, yeah, don't worry, we moved it down towards the west, away from Erie Station a little bit more. Well, that doesn't help me out very much with my historic property. So that is where we are. I don't need another picture, and I want to save the last two. But what I want to talk about is in 295-28 yard requirements. You have a line in here that says everything has to, the shrubbery, all of it has to be shown, but it has to be in harmony and with within the character of the neighborhood. That's out of your zoning. I don't see how any of this, they talk about the materials have to be, I don't see how loading docks have to do this. I'll just show that Fortune 500 you were asking about, and I know this is probably not what's happening, but I drove down the thruway because they're building in Liverpool, New York, something. And one of the things that concerned me was the retention ponds. If I can just have those next two pictures, I want to show you what was there. The one after this. One more. There is the, I think, 70-foot structure, okay, that is going up there. One more. And this is the retention pond, all right? This is what they show on the plans on West Henrietta Road in our historic hamlet. I don't see how any of this fits. Again, I am all for development. I really am. But I don't see how this fits. The other thing I'm just going to say is this. Prohibited uses, 295-26. All right. All uses of land, buildings, and structures that may be noxious, offensive, or injurious by reason of production of emissions or dust, smoke, refuse matter, odor, gas, fumes, noise, vibration, similar substance, or conditions. Jess, you don't name your tenant. This board, I think, has a duty to the citizens to at least do a noise study, an emissions study. You're in the middle of a residences. I don't understand this. And folks, there's an elephant in the room. The title to Delphi just transferred on November 17th. It transferred to Rochester Regional Health through some shell companies, but I figured that out. All right. And so here's the thing. I watched your November 16th presentation here. You were saying, you were asked a question, a very good question. I don't know by who because the camera didn't catch it all. It's on YouTube. But something about, what do we know about Delphi? How many people were there? What does that building hold? That kind of thing. Well, I'll tell you, I researched it for you guys. The heyday was 1995. There were 800 employees there. What do we think Rochester Regional Health's going to do? What do you think that's going to be? Have we factored in, Jess, into your traffic study that's being done right now, that the fact that we could have a hospital or something with 800 workers and patients and their families? I mean, this has been a little bit too casual, I think.
I'm going to interrupt you right there. So it's not been too casual. We have been aware that.
I'm sorry, I meant the presentation. I'm not talking about the board.
Sorry.
I thought the presentation was a little casual.
So just so you're aware that we are have been aware that RGH was coming in. The negotiations were sensitive, so we were asked to keep that confidential. My understanding, and Jess, correct me where I stray, it was not, the plan is it's more administrative than, in other words, it's not planned to be a hospital, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So, and just so you understand that those are two different uses.
Absolutely.
So regardless of the owner, even if they're both RGH, if we basically approve it for essentially administrative offices, they cannot switch it to a hospital without getting approval for that.
I
So,
appreciate that.
and the other thing we did make clear when they came in, they wanted to essentially bifurcate the two projects. We made it clear that, especially with regards to traffic study and parking layout, that we really couldn't. It's one big property. They share the same road. So the traffic study is being done together. Again, there is a traffic study it's not done, so he can't present the results of that. This is a preliminary presentation. Originally, they were going to cancel it. I asked them to just do a preliminary presentation. So you talk about it being casual, it's because it's not ready yet.
Gotcha.
So I just want to be fair to the developer.
Yeah.
They didn't have to present, but because the legal notices went out, we knew a bunch of people were preparing to come. We wanted to get your input, your feedback as to what you think is critical. So obviously,
Okay.
you and I had a discussion.
Yeah.
Some of those things that I brought up were actually from you.
Yes, you did.
And so, like I said, if there's other additional
And
things.
Supervisor Schultz, I just want to say this. I mean this by the bottom of my heart to this board.
Sure.
I love this town. I think this town runs well, and I think you guys have been fantastic. And it's so open, unlike other towns that I've dealt with, like the one I came from. But what I'm telling you is, I apologize if I jumped the gun. I thought when I was watching, so what I did is I went back and watched, you can watch all your presentations on YouTube. And I just thought, when I said casual, I didn't mean you guys. I meant
Right.
now I understand more. I'm sorry. You got to understand. I've poured
No
my
problem.
heart and soul into this,
Understood.
into this property. I mean, I've put over $500,000 of improvements in a building that's not worth anywhere near that, you know, but it's out of love. It's a labor of love, and it's been restored fully. I guess what I would ask is this: if we're talking about character of the neighborhood, I do have an ask of the board to consider. If you do grant this special use permit, all right, I would ask that it contain a clause that it disallows storage of outside materials and vehicles, because that doesn't certainly fit with our great little neighborhood there. And I think that's a reasonable ask. There's another reasonable ask, just like the one you made about my trees on that. The berms, you know, there's the original plan showed a berm starting right on my property line, right where that, you know, before that tree there, right on the edge of my property. The elevation change is going to be much. And so, you know, I think we have to spread this out. Again, I'm willing to work with someone, but there's got to be some real thought process of how this is done. And my problem from everything I've ever seen a town do, and I'm not talking about the town of Henrietta, other towns that I've, you know, had properties in. I sold the one to actually finish this one up here from Geneseo. They can dictate materials, they can dictate so many things, but when it comes right down to it, you can't dictate quality. You can't, you know, hone in on the fine points of execution. And so it makes me feel good that you say this is a good developer, okay? But really, I mean, this is a lot of people's homes.
So I will correct you. You actually can. A lot of towns just aren't willing to put in the effort. So I'm going to use your example of that retention pond. I think I saw Craig probably twitch when he looked at that, because that pond was not stabilized. And so if Craig came across that, if Frank tried to do that while he was doing construction, he'd probably get a stop work order.
Gotcha.
And I know this for a fact because he's issued stop work orders for some other projects. If you're not stabilized and mud is flowing everywhere, that's not okay. And that has to be fixed. So that particular pond, whoever was in charge of that, in my opinion, was negligent in their stormwater prevention, pollution. It's multiple P's, stormwater pollution prevention.
Plan.
That they basically those ponds, those construction ponds, and those, when they're typically that size, that's temporary, they're actually meant to collect the runoff and to fill up. But the sides have to be stabilized so that it can't just spill out all over the place. And so typically what happens is you'll see, some people say, well, why do they have a grading permit before they're already even starting? And part of the reason is you get that pond in early, especially if the construction is going to happen over winter. You want that pond done in the fall when the grass still has time to grow and stabilize the pond and fully prepare it so you can catch everything. And then afterwards, again, they can create them. And one of the things, there was a discussion, we had a little bit of a discussion regarding the difference between a retention pond and a detention pond. A retention pond is one that holds water. They're actually not all that common in Henrietta, but there are a number of them. You'll see them, for instance, over at Marketplace Mall. Yep. They're typically in lower lying areas where the water table's higher. The detention pond is the more common one. And what that one does, it doesn't hold water, but basically, when you switch, so as you know, even on a grassy permeable surface, right?
Yeah, we have a problem.
The water will run down that hill, especially, when it has as much slope as that area does. When it rains with any kind of rate, the water is going to run down that hill. Gravity works, right? And so one of the things that happens is you start to replace that grass with impervious surfaces, it gets worse. And so the whole point of the stormwater detention facilities is I'm catching that water and I'm detaining it so that it flows off the site at a slower rate. Because if you just allow it to flow off at full rate, it's going to inundate everything downstream. And so you create these large detention ponds, and there's a whole bunch of math that goes into it that determines here's the amount of surface, here's the amount of runoff I'm going to get, and it has to hold a 100-year rain event. Okay, that's not Noah's biblical flood levels, but it's pretty darn high, okay? And so it will fill up, and then over the next day or two, it will drain down. Yeah. They can be done very nicely. And the example I use, we were both tenants in the same office park. Rich Lefroy, if you go out onto Town Center Drive off of Calkins Road, you look to either side, there's some really nice detention ponds there. They're fully grassed. They have concrete channels in the bottom. Anywhere there is the flow in from the parking lot, they have stones to prevent erosion. On the road side, they're typically berms, so they're kind of screened from the front. From the parking lot side, they can't be bermed because the water has to flow into them, right? But the point is they're well maintained. There's flowers on there, there's shrubs, that type of stuff, that can be done. And again, knowing this developer, he will do something similar. He does have that same, he wants his sites, you got an award, he would love to earn an award, right?
Okay. I'd love to be able to give it to him.
Right.
But
so one of the things going back to it, just, in terms of that, following up on some of the procedures here, what happens is when we do the special permit, there's another step, and that's the planning board. And they go into a lot more detail than we do. One of the things we can do is put stipulations, and we've done this on a number of projects. We put stipulations, so in other words, we're not planning experts on this board. We can't sit there and maybe dictate all the things exactly how we want them, but we basically say, planning board, here's our concerns. Be sure that the approved plans address the following. And appearance. Our planning board is also an architectural review board. So appearance does play a part of that. If they just put in a lousy berm, they can absolutely make them change it and make it something more attractive.
Well,
so we do have that authority. Some towns just aren't willing to exercise it.
Well, you are willing to exercise it. When I redid the cobblestone, you guys dictated actually boxwoods, on the break and the number of boxwoods. And I mean, that was pretty involved. And so what I'm asking, I guess, is that, I think when I read through all of your zoning rules, there actually has to be, for true approval, there has to be a landscaping plan, I think, per se, that goes in
That's
first.
That's at the planning board, not here.
That's at the planning board, right?
So the detail gets a lot greater at the planning board than it does at the town board.
Do we have an opportunity to be involved at the planning board level, people that are residents and that kind of thing, to put our input on those type of
You can
plans.
certainly get it in through myself, and we'll give through Chris Martin, who is our Director of Engineering and Planning. I'm sure the folks on the planning board would love to hear it. I don't think there's actually a formal public hearing.
Gotcha.
But you know, the meetings are public. You can certainly listen to them. You can supply your feedback. But to my knowledge, there's not a formal there is for a subdivision, but not for a site plan.
Okay. I think I've said what I need to say. I just want things to be, I want to protect that historic hamlet. I really do. I'd like to have it so you still walk down the sidewalk, walk into Ken's Pizza Corner, where it's not a towering industrial complex,
Right.
where it's still a neighborhood feel.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things I'll point out, of the two historic hamlets, the East Hamlet and the West Hamlet, the East Hamlet unfortunately was largely destroyed by fire. A number of fires took out most of the historic buildings in that area. When you look at the picture of the East Hamlet today, it doesn't look much like the old East Hamlet. There's still a few buildings that the northwest corner is actually still pretty good. There's a few others. The West Hamlet, on the other hand, is almost in the same state as it was way back when.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, Tina Thompson, the town's historian, Michelle, Gary, and the rest of the Historic Site Committee, they are on this. They are not going to let us destroy the historic nature. Not that any of us want to. I'm just saying. Right, I know. I'm just saying. The point is that the instant this application came in, we started hearing from the Historic Site Committee. You know, and again, part of that's where that whole thing about we want to increase the buffering to 150 feet to historic properties because of exactly this reason.
All right.
And I will point out that this town board, well, actually, I guess it was the predecessor board, but the majority of the board members were on the previous one that turned down the Dollar General because it was going to change the nature of that.
I can't thank
West
you enough for
Hamlet.
that.
So,
Yes.
you know, we do fully understand that. We take that into account, and we'll be taking it into account here.
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for your service. I really don't know why you guys would want to do this and do this to yourselves, but thank goodness someone does take the time to do it. And really, truly, I mean it. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
taking
Thank
care of
you
that
for-
building too.
yeah,
It's beautiful.
Thank you for investing in
Gorgeous.
your home and the community.
Jess or Frank, I don't know if either of you want to chime in, say anything at this point with regards to that?
The one thing I will say is, you know, as mentioned, we were a little bit early, so I apologize for not having all the detailed answers, which we'll certainly have the next time we appear before this board. You know, as we've been sitting here talking, I've been kind of looking and thinking through the plan, and we absolutely can make some significant improvements. We can increase that separation. Even though a landscape plan, detailed landscaping plan isn't required as part of the special use permit, one of the things I will offer and submit prior to the next meeting is a landscape rendering showing the plan for, in a lot more detail than what's currently shown, the buffering and screening and the preservation of the existing tree stand there, to really show and give this board and the community confidence that we're being diligent in recognizing the value of the properties that are there now. So that's certainly something that will be coming in the future, and I very much loud and clear hear the concerns of that have been expressed so far.
Thanks, Jess. That's really nice.
The other thing, Jess, we had talked previously about the idea of presenting a 3D rendering of essentially the view of the property from West Henrietta Road, as well as from Erie Station Road, because I know that in talking with you and Frank, the plan was to carve into the hill to sit the building lower so it wouldn't stick up so much. And then the idea was that you would show us what the rendering would look like. So, we would see whether it shows over the top of the berm, and if so, what kind of loading that puts on the view shed from those two areas.
Yes, that is something we can do.
Howard, before you get up and speak, Craig, could you change the covering? We have a protective cover over the mic since it's hard to speak with the masks on. And introduce yourself. And
Sure. Just wanted to make sure I'm good to go. My name's Howard Konar, president of Konar Properties in Henrietta. There is a slide that will come up, hopefully. There we go, in a second. As indicated on the map there, we're the owners of Erie Station Business Park that's located along Thruway Park Drive. Also Erie Station Village, that's west of West Henrietta Road, and the retail plaza just across from the intersection of Thruway Park Drive and West Henrietta Road. I'd like to address two aspects of this special permit application. The first one is traffic. When we started development of Erie Station Business Park back in 1998, our goal was to avoid an increase in traffic at the intersection of Erie Station Road and West Henrietta Road. That's the intersection shown in red there by the old Cartwright Inn. It's a tight intersection. It's not well suited for truck turns. And in 1998, it was usually really congested in the early morning hours. After meeting with the town, we decided to extend Thruway Park Drive from the place that it ended back then all the way down to Erie Station Road. We also decided to build the new intersection between Thruway Park Drive and West Henrietta Road as a Y rather than a T. And you can see that in blue on the far left side of the map. You can also see that we actually pulled up part of Old Erie Station Road. The purpose in doing that was to encourage eastbound traffic, both trucks and cars, to bypass the intersection at the Cartwright Inn and use Thruway Park Drive instead. When the work was done in 2000, we had diverted about 7,500 vehicles per day away from that intersection. And the cost of the project back in 1999 and 2000 was around $4 million. My concern, my first one about the site plan, is it could bring an increase in traffic back to that intersection and basically undo the work that we did in 1999. I think a thorough and accurate traffic study has to be done to measure the impact of the proposed building on traffic and transportation at that intersection and all the other affected intersections. I don't know how a traffic study could have been completed now during COVID that could be accurate. I don't know how a traffic study has been done that doesn't reflect the full use of the old Delphi building by Rochester Regional Health, since that's brand new. I also believe that careful design is needed to discourage trucks from using that intersection marked in red. We know from our own experience that some traffic into Cooper Vision in particular comes from the west off River Road. My second concern is the proximity of the new project to the hamlet of West Henrietta, to Erie Station Village, and to our retail development on West Henrietta Road. We built our retail development the same way that we built Erie Station Village, using designs that complement the existing architecture in and around our area of West Henrietta. More than that, we paid attention to the design of the site. Rather than building a typical strip mall with a big sea of parking in front, we created small groups of unique buildings with separate, smaller parking lots. I've seen the buildings that FSI has done in other parts of Rochester, and generally I admire their work. My concern isn't with the quality of their building, but with their selection of this site for a very tall warehouse. The hillside that now exists west of Delphi screens the Delphi building from the hamlet. And even though the Delphi building sits lower than the hillside, it still is visible from West Henrietta Road as you drive down it. So now imagine a warehouse building roughly the same size as the Cooper Vision building and 10 feet taller than the Cooper Vision building sitting on top of that hill. It would completely dwarf everything around it and altogether change the character of the hamlet. It's possible, and I know we're just looking at very preliminary plans, that some enormous amount of earthwork could avoid that result. But there's an elevation change here in the site. I don't know what it is, but it's significant. And I literally can't imagine the scale of the earthwork that would be needed to sink this building down so that it wouldn't overshadow the hamlet. I would therefore recommend as part of the approval process that the town require a set of perspective drawings showing the mass and elevation of the building and evaluate it as it would be seen from Erie Station Road and from West Henrietta Road in perspective. And based on that analysis, I'd recommend the town impose setback requirements, elevation and grading requirements, and other conditions that limit the visual impact of the building and the parking areas. Thank you for listening. Those are my comments at this time, though, of course, I might have additional comments as the plans develop in the future.
Sure. So to be clear, the giant berms that you see on the plans, those are coming from the carve out into the west side of the hill. That basically, it is a significant amount of earth moving that they're talking about.
Yeah, I just saw the plans
No,
briefly
right,
tonight
right.
on the screen, so I don't have a chance to analyze.
Yep, no, understood. I'm just letting you know, you are correct. It is a significant amount of earth moving that they'd be talking about. Hopefully to be done when it's wet so that they don't generate a ton of dust. But the, yeah, it is significant. There's no other way to say it, because the plan is, as I understand it, like I said, to essentially cut into the hill. They would build embankments to hold that back. That earth would then move to the west and south to form the berms. And essentially the building sits down in almost like a bowl to hide. Now, again, depending on the height of the berms, you know, as much as the height of the building, it gets to what is the elevation of the top of that building, right? Because as you point out, a 2-story building on the top of a hill is a lot more visible than a 4-story building way at the bottom of the hill. Let's use Methodist Hill, for example, right? As an extreme, but that's something that we're going to have to see. So again, as I mentioned earlier before you got up, so let me say this. I agree with you. We will require the visual massing and renderings from the various views, because I'm right on the same page with you. That absolutely has to be there. If you stand at that intersection and behind all these historic homes, I see the top of a big rectangle, no. That to me is an unmitigated significant impact on the historic nature, you know, the character of the neighborhood. So if they can't mitigate that somehow to where it doesn't create this large mass sitting behind those buildings, then in my opinion, they were unsuccessful in their seeker mitigation. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Now, the Delphi building itself, that is current, there's no plans currently for the Delphi building itself?
So again, the plans aren't submitted yet. As was mentioned, RGH purchased it. So basically, if you'll remember, actually, I don't know if you remember, because I don't even know if it ever got to the board. So Frank came in to meet with Chris, Craig, and I usually refer to those as the pre-planning meetings, to just essentially get the temperature of what if we did this. And, you know, everyone was talking about a Fortune 500 company, right? They're asking about Amazon. At the time, Amazon was looking for, I don't remember what it was, roughly 500,000 square foot warehouse space. And one of the potential sites was this Delphi, but that would have meant knocking down the Delphi building. And my immediate answer was, I would hate that, right? To me, the two most iconic buildings in Henrietta are the Delphi building and the Kodak Riverwood buildings. Very different architectures, very iconic. And so I asked the developer, can you instead try to find somebody who would use the building intact? The problem is it's a very unique building, and it was tough to find a client, but he did. And that's RGH. So their plan is to use the building as is. It would be more, you know, again, their administrative work. We're not talking about a patient center. We don't have, well, I don't know if they've got all the final numbers in there, but yes, that will be in the traffic impact study. To answer your question, nobody uses the current, they don't measure any of the traffic today from 2020. But in a lot of these places in the last few years, because of other projects, or just because they measure them ongoing, especially for state and county roads, they do have traffic counts from there. And then what they do is they increase the background traffic based on the amount of development that's been in the area. And then they typically add I'll call it a fudge factor to cover any variances. The other thing they then do is look at the use that they're talking about, and there's software that creates trip generation. So it basically says, here's what the expected traffic in and out. And it changes depending on the use. And so they roll all that data through, and then they do, it goes into essentially a computer model, which talks about what's the impact on the intersections, what's the average weight, what's that type of stuff. When it comes in, it gets reviewed multiple times. The town reviews it ourselves. So both our the engineering and planning department takes a look at it, but we also have a professional consultant who's spent many, many years in the traffic business, and he reviews it looking for any discrepancies, anything missing, to make sure that the developer didn't miss anything when they put this data together, and to make sure that they're good assumptions, right? Because sometimes you take a look at, well, how many people are going to turn right versus turning left? Some of it's an art as much as it is a science, but again, they review it. In addition, because there's a state road involved, the New York State DOT reviews it. And because there's a county road involved, the Monroe County DOT reviews it. So this one will actually be reviewed 3 times by 3 different agencies, plus our own consultant. So there will be a lot of eyes on this, and I expect there to be a lot of back and forth. The way it usually happens is we say, so for instance, we might say, well, your numbers are way too low, use these numbers. They say, oh, that's way too high. The experts get together and they figure out what is the most reasonable numbers to use there based on the expected use. But, again, the use for that facility, both the new facility that they're talking about here, as well as the reuse of the Delphi facility, those have to go in together because they're using the same road. One of the things that happens is if when we do this, if we don't have the full RGH numbers, we essentially get some preliminary numbers, and let's say I'm just going to make up a number, 800 cars a day. If we do this analysis and determine, boy, if there's more than 800 cars there, we've got a problem, then essentially that site more or less gets capped at 800 cars, unless they can make improvements, like bring another exit out somewhere else that will take the traffic further away, see if they could get a direct entrance exit off of I-390. I'm just making something up. But, the point is, if they've hit a max for that site because of that road, then they may not be able to fully utilize the site. Or again, the way it works is if they can somehow mitigate that issue by some other means. So we absolutely are taking all that into account. And again, our consultant will make sure as best we can that what they're presenting to us is an accurate representation, and that the impacts are an accurate representation of what the potential impacts will be. So, but I've marked down some of the points you made, Howard, and thank you very much for making them. And again, thank you for the work you did on that village to keep it in character with the neighborhood. Mike?
Yeah, I had some more questions, and I
Sure.
look forward to the update because, like I said, my questions were using the plan, the information they gave us.
And Mike didn't like that plan, so he's glad you threw it out.
I didn't say that, but anyways, I have a quick question about on page 7 of where it says, it asks about, are you going to make accommodations for hybrid and electric vehicles? And you have no. Why would you? So you wouldn't put in charging stations?
No, that's definitely something we can consider. I mean, that might have been somewhat overlooked in the original application, but I think now with a pretty significant movement towards electric vehicles, that's something that at very least we would put in the conduit and all the infrastructure so that charging stations could easily be added as needed basis.
Right.
Yeah, I would strongly encourage the planning board to make sure that those are on the plan.
And then also on that same, in that same section, it asks about sidewalks and bicycle accommodations to existing pedestrian bicycle routes. I mean, you have a no there. I believe currently they have sidewalks going out to West Henrietta Road. Would you have that anymore or no?
Yeah, for sure. We would, again, this plan isn't fully developed yet, but absolutely we would have bicycles connect or, bicycle accommodations on site with a pathway connecting out to the sidewalks that are existing today.
Okay, you have, the reason I ask is it's no on the plan.
Yeah, when we update our EAF with the new plan, we'll make sure we fix that.
Okay, and like I said, I look forward to that, but, and I want to thank Chris Martin too. I had a lot of other questions that he got answered, so saved you a little bit of time.
Thank you, Chris.
And also, Chris and Mike, or excuse me, Howard and Mike, could you guys ask the community and the neighbors whether, one of the things that we're doing is where people want it for anywhere that property has road frontage. One of the things we've been doing is looking at adding a sidewalk. It looks like there already is a sidewalk on their property on West Henrietta Road. It does not look like there is any sidewalk there is sidewalk currently on Erie Station Road. There is not currently any sidewalk on West Henrietta Road. I don't know if that would create, if that would be out of character, or there's a sidewalk across the street, if that's sufficient. But have a discussion with your neighbors to see what you guys might want to see in terms of sidewalk. Because I certainly wouldn't want to ask them to put a sidewalk in that none of the neighbors want. You can come up.
I mean, I was referring to on the.
No, I understand on the
project.
property itself, but
Right.
the point is,
I-
a sidewalk that then dumps out into the road is not necessarily the best for pedestrians.
I'll just throw my 2 cents that I don't think that area isn't really conducive to a sidewalk. The sidewalk on the other side of the street is what everybody crosses and uses. The problem is you've got, like in my property, you got elevation change. It's a big rolling hill down to the street from the flower beds there. So it would be very, very tough to put a sidewalk, and that might be overkill to have them put a sidewalk in.
But perhaps if, especially if New York State DOT mandates they put a light or something in there, then maybe a crosswalk.
A crosswalk would be a fine thing, but I think that the sidewalk would be an overkill.
Okay,
Just
great.
personally.
No, I appreciate that. That's why I was asking, because I thought that might be the case, but I just wanted to see what, like I said, I want to know what the neighbors want in that regards. The crosswalk would ultimately be up to the New York State DOT, but they typically don't like to put them in unless it's a controlled intersection. So there's right now, one of the things, I don't know if they've got a sidewalk. It doesn't look like there's a sidewalk going down to the Erie Station Road sidewalk, because there is a crosswalk at the Erie Station Road intersection. So that might be an opportunity, especially, if employees from either of the two facilities want to go to lunch, they can go patronize Ken's Pizza Corner, have a nice walk, grab a slice of pizza, walk back, work those carbs off. So other people who wish to speak.
Can I interject with some members from our virtual audience?
That works great, because that'll give Craig time to change oh, never mind. He already did change. Go ahead, Becky.
Okay, perfect. Well, Jeanette had her hand raised for a while there. She's since lowered it, but I just want to give her a chance in case she did want to talk. Jeanette, did you have anything you wish to say?
Yes, I didn't know if I missed the height of the building.
So the height of the building, they're talking 50 feet. which means they need to get a special permit, which is one of the reasons that there won't be a decision made today. They are asking the limit on in the zone without getting a special use permit is 45 feet. So they're asking to go 5 feet above that.
And how many stories does that work out to be?
It depends how you measure. That's 4 to 5 stories.
Okay. Because I live on the south side of Erie Station. I'm just wondering if it's going to block my beautiful view of downtown.
Yeah, so that gets into where, like I said, I want them to do the rendering. It's also referred to as a massing model. It basically creates the building as a 3D mass. And then, you have the terrain topography there, including the berm they would be adding, and it would show, they can essentially then create a viewpoint as to what you'd be seeing from Erie Station Road looking north.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Any others, Becky?
We do. First, I don't know if you want to address this question from anonymous attendee. It says, does medical equal toxins and hazmat problems?
So no, not if they're doing their job correctly. When you look at drugstores have drugs in them that if they were to spill all their stuff out over the ground could cause some issues. But again, nobody really considers, I don't think anybody considers a drugstore to be a hazardous waste site. It's obviously if it's a case where they're moving a bunch of hazardous stuff, then per the specifics of that zone, they couldn't do it. So we'd have to get into the details of what's in there, but like I said, by zoning code, they can't have dangerous materials there.
I can't see your physical audience, but I do have another person with their hand raised.
Okay, let's do one more, and then I'm going to go to the audience here.
Oh, Dorothy just lowered her hand, but I'm just going to give her a chance because she had it raised for a second. Dorothy. Oh, why isn't? Okay, hang on just a second. I had a slight issue with Dorothy. We're going to fix it. Dorothy, there you go. Oh, I see her, but she's muted. Are you able to unmute on your end?
Yes, I am.
There
Sorry.
you go.
My name is Dorothy Greer. I live at 851 Erie Station Road. I'm at the top of the hill on Erie Station Road. I want to ask something that probably is not part of this meeting, but I want to ask, I'm very disturbed by the amount of empty buildings in Henrietta and a lot of warehouse space. And I guess that's my big question is why do we need to put a warehouse here when there are so many other buildings available? And I know for a lot of companies.
You know where these empty warehouses are? Because I will tell you, we've had 2 companies coming in looking for warehouse space, existing warehouse space, and they've not been able to find any.
Well, how much of Southtown Plaza is empty?
Southtown Plaza is not warehouse space. It is commercial space. Warehouse is not an allowed use there.
Okay. Clay Road has nothing available?
No. No, in fact, they just built additional warehouse space on Clay Road.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's my concern is a lot of the empty buildings we have around here. And I would think there would be.
Most of the empty buildings are retail, and we have been working with, when we did the recent update, we did create an overlay district to try to address that. And a lot of them have been addressed. Circuit City filled up, the Hostess facility filled up. This is filling up the Delphi. We're right now working with someone potentially, hopefully to get into Gander Mountain. Sam's Club was filled up. The mall, the whole Sears wing and Sears building is becoming URMC, being filled up. So there has been a lot of progress made in terms of filling empty buildings. There's not as many as you might think. There's certainly, that I'm aware of, there isn't, I don't know of any empty warehouse facilities in and around Henrietta.
Sam's is being completely used?
Sam's is being used by Cantel and they have the right on all of it, yes.
But it's not being used fully.
I don't know that answer. You'd have to talk to Cantel.
Okay. My other concern is traffic conditions. And I can tell you now from living on the street that truck traffic and traffic in general has increased at least double on Erie Station Road. Because when people leave Delphi, they don't want to go out on West Henrietta Road if they have to turn left and head south or head west. So they are leaving on the Erie Station exit and they're turning right and they're going past all our houses. And with 800 more possible employees in that building, plus what may happen with this building, it's going to be a lot more traffic on our street. So I'm very concerned about that.
Okay, we will make sure the traffic study addresses that and take a look at what that expected increase might be. Or if there's any way to mitigate that.
If we could mitigate the speed too, that would be great because they don't do 35 at all.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say one improvement we think we made was the previous plan had 2 access points to the new building, one from Erie Station Road, one from West Henrietta Road, which could potentially result in people leaving as it was just described. There's only now a connection point at the West Henrietta Road access in an attempt to encourage vehicles to travel directly north up to Lehigh Station, not through the, not past all single family homes or through that West Henrietta Road Hamlet intersection.
Great. Thank you, Jess. Mike?
Hi, my name is Michael Heading. I am a neighbor of Mark's. I live at 5628 West Henrietta Road, 2 properties to the south. I too moved into the West Henrietta Hamlet because it was a historical area. My wife and I have been lovingly restoring our house for the past 20 years, and where we don't have the financial resources that Mark does, we still have probably sunk more money into the house than we should have, in an effort to try and make it as period correct as possible. We're kind of in the same method that Mark is. We always knew that there was always a chance somebody might be able to put something on property. I understand too that you can't dictate that people can't use their land, but we do want it to be sensible, take into account all the residents. I do know that in the past 20 years, that neighborhood has changed a lot. The development of Erie Station Village was done very tastefully and we didn't notice a negative impact in any way to our historic neighborhood. So we do appreciate Konar's effort in that. We just hope that future developments do the same, and our house will also be listed on the state and national registries within the next 6 months. So it's not as old as Mark's. It was built in 1897 and does have a historical significance to the town.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And again, this is not the last opportunity to speak. There will be another public hearing related to this application as well as to the height application. Becky?
I wasn't sure if there was somebody there, but the Historic Site Committee has asked that I read a prepared statement into the record.
Okay,
So if you're ready for me, I'll do that.
I am.
All right, good evening Supervisor Schultz and members of the town board. The proposed distribution center project in West Henrietta Village is on the Historic Site Committee agenda for discussion at our December 15th, 2020 meeting. Due to this public hearing being scheduled for tonight, the Historic Site Executive Committee felt our thoughts should be presented. The Four Corners at West Henrietta and Erie Station Road, the West Village, is the location of some of the earliest development of the town. Today, the immediate surroundings represent a diverse community of residential, community service, and houses of worship, with few commercial properties. This location is the last representation of what the early architecture and the atmosphere of Henrietta was like when it became a town and should be protected. The proposed project will be in the immediate area of multiple historic properties in the West Henrietta Village area. The New York State Cultural Resource Information System, CRIS, has stated the West Henrietta Village area at the corners of West Henrietta Road and Erie Station Road is eligible for the creation of the New York State West Henrietta Historic District. There are 25 properties deemed eligible by the state in the proposed district documents. 13 properties in the West Village area are currently designated Henrietta Historic Sites by the town. Of these 13, 4 properties are on West Henrietta Road and 4 properties are on Erie Station Road in close proximity or adjacent to the project parcel lot lines. The property at 5628 West Henrietta Road, which will share project lot lines, is currently under nomination review for the National Register of Historic Places. The proposed boundary for the West Henrietta Historic District starts at 5325 West Henrietta Road, currently the Moose Lodge, built circa 1830, heads south along both sides of West Henrietta Road to Telephone Road, and from the Village Corner east along both sides of Erie Station Road to 808 Erie Station. Clearly, many buildings located on the Four Corners and within the proposed district are in excess of 100 years old. The town is extremely fortunate that these historic buildings have lasted into the 21st century. The historic character of this corner is a valuable asset to the social and cultural history of our town. The location of a busy 50-foot tall, 210,000 square foot commercial enterprise on the proposed site will not only increase traffic flow and noise in a residential area, but will significantly alter the historic character, cultural landscape, and impact the entire Four Corners area of the West Henrietta Village. It is the opinion of the Historic Site Executive Committee that every effort should be made to protect these historic properties and historical heritage of the West Henrietta Village. Thank you.
Becky, if you could do me a favor and between now and the next meeting, or, maybe ask them at their meeting to give us what the setback is from the right of way for that historic district that they're talking about creating.
I will write myself a note.
Yeah, I don't know if they're just including the parcels or sometimes they basically say, it's the first 150 feet from the right of way, if they could get us what the proposed definition of that historic committee or site is, that would be helpful.
Yes, I've jotted down that note, and I believe Tina's in here as well, and I'm sure she's also jotted it down as well.
Obviously, we would have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, we would have nothing that appears within that area that isn't compatible with the district itself. Okay, any other questions, comments? So Don, since I assume we keep the hearing open, so I will do it. Okay. So hearing no further comments, we're going to close the hearing for tonight, but we're going to keep the public hearing open for the next town board meeting. We will advertise what the schedule is that, because the start time is dependent upon how many other applications are present. But one of the things I will note, I would like to start it, even if this is the only one, we need to start sooner than 6:30. I guess we should have thought of that a front of time, but we missed that. And I apologize to anybody who's waiting for the town board meeting to have started, but we knew people, this is important and passionate, and a lot of people have invested a lot of time, effort, and money into preserving the historic nature of that district. And we wanted to make sure they were all heard tonight. So thank you for everybody who participated. And again, we'll keep you up to date, and we will do our damnedest to make sure there is not a significant negative impact on the historic nature of that district, nor on the character of the neighborhood of even the non-historic houses as well. So thank you again. And hearing no objections, this ends the December 9th Henrietta Town Board Special Use Permit meeting.
All right, thank you. We have a lot to work with. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
So Becky, I would like to terminate the recording, and then immediately we'll start the next one. If anybody needs a break, go take it now. Otherwise, we're going to go straight into the town board meeting.
Steve, the next special permit is not going to be in December, right? It's going to be in January.
It's in January, correct?
Because I know we have a.
It's just the organizational meeting is in December.
Okay.
Okay, I'm officially stopping the YouTube stream. If you're watching on YouTube, just wait for the next stream to